Hi there, I'm Kendra. I'm the owner and designer at Fin Design. I'm really excited to have you along on this journey of learning how to do embroidery. So let's get started looking through your kit. First thing I would like to show you are the prints. They have been designed so that you can stitch anywhere where you see the light gray. You can stitch as much or as little depending on how confident you get throughout this process. You can either do all of the stitching where I've done the outlines. You can add or not add some of the extra little details that we'll go over in the next video. Or if once you get really confident, you can start doing some satin stitching on some of the darker shaded areas. So it's completely up to you how much or how little you'd like to stitch. But I'd love to get started on this process with you. So find a nice bright place to work and grab yourself a glass of wine or your favorite beverage and we'll get started. So if you purchased a kit, you will have a card with your threads, and you will also have a hoop plus your needle and your print. The only other thing you'll need other than your drink is a pair of small thread snips. So I will show you a trick on how to get these prints put onto the hoop the easiest. What I like to do is put the hoop down on a flat surface and then just press the top part of the hoop over the print and then tighten it slightly, and then you'll be able to pull the print around so that it's nice and tight. Okay. So let's get started on actually stitching, and we're going to start with green because it is my favorite color. I've cut the lengths of thread to about 36 inches long. This way they don't get super frayed as you're stitching, but it should give you enough time so that you're not constantly changing threads. So each strand or each thread is made up of 6 little strands. What we're going to do is pull one strand out to start with. Generally, I like to use one strand and then do this awesome trick that my mom taught me years ago. Fold the strand in half so that you have one end with the 2 pieces, and then the other end will create a loop. And we'll put the end with the 2 pieces into your needle. Just create a little tail for yourself there, and then you'll have your other end as a loop. That way, once we're stitching, we don't have a lot of loose ends. We don't have to tie any knots at the back. It's a really great way to economize on your thread and also to reduce frustration. So let's get started somewhere where you can do a continuous loop around. So let's start here and we'll just get going around. Now, the thing with embroidery is you are working from the back a lot of the time. So the trick is to just sort of gently poke around until you find where you're going to be coming up from. You always come up from the back. So we're going to just pull a little bit through and then make a small stitch. I like to just do 3 or 4 thread lengths on the print long, and you'll sort of figure out what your most comfortable stitch length is. So for our first stitch, let's put the needle in and then turn your print over. And instead of pulling it all the way through, we're going to thread through our little loop that we've made at the end of our thread and then pull it tight. Keeps it nice and clean and tidy on the back. And like I said, it reduces the frustration for you because you're not going to be tying knots and losing threads and having loose ends all over the place. So now we can just get started on following the gray. Just making small stitches. This is called a back stitch because we come in from one end and go back to our last stitch. Just following along on the gray outline with small stitches. Any areas that are rounded, you'll want to take slightly smaller stitches. Just do what you need to do to stay on the curve, basically. Okay, so now I'm come to the end of this long sort of stretch, and I'm also almost to the end of my thread. So I will show you how to finish up. Basically what we're gonna just do is loop around the back of the stitches in the back several times. Not going through the print, just looping around behind the stitches to make it nice and tight and nice and tidy. And then we'll use our snips to take off that end. As we go along doing our outlines, I wanted to make one point about traveling your thread underneath. As you can see here, if you travel the thread across any areas that are lighter, you're going to see it. So we can do the same sort of thing that we did when we finished the thread at the end of a stitch here to sort of avoid having that dark area underneath. I like to just finish up the area that we're working. And again, it also keeps it neater. Just travel our thread underneath the stitches. Again, not going through the print, just sort of looping around in our threads and then starting back. In our next area. Again, just making smaller stitches when we go around tighter chart curves, just to keep it a little bit cleaner. And then finishing up by looping in the back again. So continue working on doing the outlines in the colors that you see in the example. And once you've done that, then I'll come back and we're going to do some fun extra little stitches in the next video on doing just some little additional embellishments.